Procrastination by education and just a simple lack of taking action are two of the biggest pitfalls that entrepreneurs in the coaching, hypnotherapy, and NLP practitioner businesses are facing when they're wanting to grow their business and they're just not getting the results that they want. This type of inaction is very common, and worse, a lot of people are taking actions that make them feel like they're busy, make them feel like they're expending energy. Maybe they're in the procrastination by education trap where they're learning, doing inputs, doing somewhat meaningful, but mostly meaningless actions in their business, and they're just not moving forward. Today, my guest on the podcast, on the Hypno Game Changers podcast, is the wonderful Vicki Poole, and she's going to talk about how she found the context that was required for her to escape the procrastination by education and the lack of meaningful action trap and start taking real, meaningful action in her business consistently and start seeing dramatic results rapidly. So stay tuned for this episode. You're going to want to hear this information. It's an absolute game changer. Welcome everybody to the Hypno Game Changers podcast. The Hypno Game Changers podcast, of course, is the podcast hosted by me, Ryan Montes, dedicated to game changers for people just like you, hypnotherapists, NLP practitioners, coaches. And every episode, I'm speaking to an expert in this field who is going to share one thing that has been a massive game changer for them, either in life or in business. And in a lot of cases, it's going to be a little bit of both. Of course, I'm your host, Ryan Montes. I'm a trainer of hypnotherapy, neuro-linguistic programming. I've been in the personal development space and coaching space for 6 years, but I've been studying the subconscious mind work and working with it, NLP, hypno, all that stuff for just about 20 years now. So I want to introduce our guest today. Our guest is going to be the wonderful Vicki Poole, who actually I had the pleasure of being one of her hypnosis trainers in the past. Vicki's doing big things in business. She's been growing really rapidly lately. It definitely she routinely catches my attention with what she's got going on. So we're going to be speaking with her today in just a minute. Before we get started, I do want to mention that this episode is sponsored by the Mission and Movement Training Mastermind, which is one of my masterminds, the #1 private and exclusive mastermind for hypnotherapists and coaches who want to make a massive impact on the world, but don't want to wait forever for all the pieces of the business puzzle, mindset puzzle, and skill set puzzle to come together. We have it all in one place, a dramatically transformative experience. Okay, Vicki, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm so
How was
excited to
that?
be here.
How was that whole intro? That was the first time I've ever done that.
It was beautiful. I loved it. I was wanting to take notes. I think I need to change my intro.
Okay, well, you can model it. I'll send you the
Okay.
replay. You can copy it word for word if you wish. So, like I mentioned, before we hit record, Vicki, these episodes are going to be short and sweet, but if you don't mind, just a very brief introduction of yourself for the audience.
All right. Well, my name is Vicki Poole, and I am a transformational coach and a hypnotist. And I had the pleasure of getting my first certification through Ryan, which was so amazing that I had to do more. But I live in Georgia, USA. So I have an adult daughter that lives with me. I have animals, and I have a business that I love. And the more it grows, the more I love it. So it's definitely the best part of my life right now, I will say.
Okay, amazing. And you would agree that you've been experiencing some very positive growth in your business,
Yes.
both in the recently and I think over the last months and years, really, there's been a
Yeah.
lot of good stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
And so the game changer that, I think we want to dive into today is, again, before we hit record, we were talking about how, like many people, you had that experience of going to seminars, learning. You had all the knowledge, you had all the understanding. And even after you started your business and you started offering your services to the world, there was just that feeling of like, I know what to do, but I'm not taking action, right? Is that right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. How did you know you were in that position where it's like, I keep going to these seminars, I feel, maybe it's like, I feel great at the seminar, and then it's like, I come home and nothing's shaken, right? Like, what was that like being in that situation?
Well, in some ways it made me feel like I was doing something wrong, and which in some ways I was, but it was like I would get so pumped with everything that I just learned, and I would have my notes, I would read over them, but I didn't do a doggone thing to move my business forward or even my personal life forward. And so I always felt like I was just spinning my wheels and I was staying in the same place no matter what I was doing.
Yeah. And so and let's get right to the good part. When did the shift happen? Because you mentioned there was a point where it was like, and this is going to be the game changer, by the way, folks. Spoiler alert. There was a point where you started to realize, okay, something is different now. I'm actually taking action. I'm executing. Things are happening, and I'm seeing results. When did that start to come for you?
Well, I when I decided I wanted to dive into hypnosis and I took your course, I paid for your course and did that. And then from there, I hired a business coach, which I had never done before, and worked with him. And then moved on from there and worked with another coach, Stacy Lauren. And each one of those things I not only paid for, but I had the great experience of someone that was constantly helping me to learn and implement the things that I was learning to do because I was full of knowledge and no implementation at all.
Yeah. And all of a sudden you went from, being full of knowledge and no implementation to full of knowledge and tons of implementation
Yeah.
and seeing
Yeah.
results. And so you mentioned a few key things there that I just want to call out for the audience because they are important. One of my mentors when I was starting out in business, mentioned to me, you got to have skin in the game, right? If you're not investing, and she used to say time, money, and energy, or some combination, some serious combination thereof into creating a result, you're very unlikely to create that result. So you specifically said, well, you put down your money, you hired the business coach, you paid for one of my trainings. But would you agree that it was, there was part of that shift was shifting to this willingness and this ability to say, okay, I'm going to put down, and sometimes we use the word sacrifice, even though I don't want to give people the wrong idea. It's not really a sacrifice when you're
Right.
investing in your business, but you crossed a line where you're like, okay, I'm going to have skin in the game, basically. Was that a shift for you?
That was a major shift. And also, when I did that, I decided that I wasn't going to be a bystander. I was going to be doing whatever it was I was told to do.
Yeah.
And so now as soon as I get instructions, I immediately start implementing because learn through movement.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So having skin in the game was part of, and we're building up to kind of, I think, what is the totality of this game
Yeah.
change for you? I'm just gonna okay, so but just having skin in the game, is not enough, right? Because you and I both know a lot of coaches, a lot of hypnotherapists, a lot of NLP folks, a lot of entrepreneurs, right? And there's a lot of them that have skin in the game. They've paid their money for their training. They've hired, people to help them or whatever, and they're either not seeing results, unfortunately, or they're not seeing results at the rate that they want to. So, there's more to this equation. I don't think it's good advice to just tell people, well, have skin in the game. I don't think that would have been enough, to make the big difference for you. And the other thing that we kind of chatted about before we hit record was I didn't use this term, but a term that I use often is procrastination by education. And I think
Mhm.
you might have been caught in kind of one of these, what I call a procrastination by
Yeah.
education loop. And then, yeah, you took the training with me, you learned hypnotherapy from me, did your certification. And then it was soon after that that you escaped the procrastination by education loop. And I think it was just, because the right context came together where you moved into execution. And I think the
Yeah.
word you used was implementation.
Yeah.
And, it's probably common sense to most people. Like, yeah, you got to take action if you want to see results. And I'm sure you knew that at the time,
Mhm.
but it's easier said than done, right? Even though it's
Right.
common sense to most people, can say, well, yeah, there's been many places in my life where I knew what to do and I didn't do it. So let's go back to that word context. Like we talked about skin in the game. Sure, that's important. What were the other pieces of the context that caused you to start executing, to move into implementation?
I believe the way it feels right now when I look back at it, it was that every person that I was working with was giving me specific task. This is what you said you want to get, do this first. Do this, do this, do this. And so I had specific things to move forward with. Whereas prior to that, it was like a general thing. So it was like a soup bowl full of stuff and I wouldn't know where to start. So I did nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he was an ads guy. I can't remember exactly who said this, but I heard someone recently say, if you want to absolutely debilitate an entrepreneur, just overwhelm them with information.
Hmm.
Just tell them everything conceivably they possibly could be doing to improve their business and then
Yeah.
just leave them to their own devices. And it's true, right? Like,
Yeah. Very true.
you
It
go and
was
you
true
take a
for me.
training. Yeah. You go and you take a training, and you read one of these brilliant books that are out there, like you read a Hormozy book or a Russell Brunson book or something. There's so much valuable information. And then it's just like paralysis. It's like, oh, well, what do I do? And so I liked what you said there. It's just, and now I can't remember if you just said it or if you said it when we were talking earlier, but that, not having the mentor or the teacher or the trainer give you a bunch of information and then send you off on your own. It's more like, here's a little bit of information. Here's just what you need to know, or just enough to take the next step. Go take the next step and let's see how it goes. I think
Yeah.
that was that part of the
Oh, yeah,
context for you?
definitely, and to this day, even when I work with someone, I'm doing some collaboration with people, and when we have a call about what we're doing, the last thing that I talk about on that call is, "Okay, what's our first step from here?" Because now I've learned that that is such a powerful place to be because you do the first one, you're gonna get to the next one, but you can't start anywhere else.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. So now I think we're getting a much better idea of what this game changer, what the context that creates movement actually is, right? I think we got a couple of good criteria there. We got, you got to have skin in the game. You have to be investing time, money, or energy, or some combination thereof, right? Because you want to have this, you want to create a subconscious desire to get a return on your investment. And that's the
Right.
way I think of it. And then you want to avoid, procrastination by education, right? You want to put
Mhm.
yourself in a position where you can, accumulate small wins in the direction of, your bigger goal. And I think one of the easiest ways to do that is to work with, yeah, like you mentioned, you mentioned 3 coaches before we hit record who had been, instrumental in you being in this execution mode rather than, the paralysis
Right.
mode. And I think that is also, it's not mandatory, but that's the closest thing to a shortcut maybe there is having somebody who's been there and done it, kind of standing in your corner and just making sure that you're doing it. You're being there and you're doing it. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Full out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you tell somebody who's in that position that you were in, where, maybe they've got their certification as a whatever, as a hypnotherapist or a coach or an NLP practitioner, or maybe, they've got a wealth of life experience and they're like, I'm ready to be helping people, but I'm not helping people. So what should they do? Like, what advice can you give them to move out of that, very common pitfall of, not moving into movement?
Right now, I'm thinking it is find someone who can help you to implement, whether that's a coach that does the same thing you do or a different coach, but that is at least a little bit further than you. It doesn't have to be Alex Hormozy, but it's just further along than you are and can actually say, do this, do this, do this. Because that to me was the game changer with having the push, the accountability of you gotta do this task and then we'll go to the next one kinda thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think having somebody in your corner that even can, be a little bit, in a kind way, a little bit assertive about
Mhm.
reminding you, like, you don't need to see the top of the staircase to take the first step, right? That old cliche
Right.
expression
Yeah,
that is also
yeah.
very true.
Mhm.
It's, I think it's harder to be aware of that and take action than to have somebody like, you're paying this person to watch, or you have a friend, or you have an accountability buddy who's watching you to enforce you don't need
Yeah,
to see the top of the
yeah,
staircase to take the next step, right?
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and again, that goes back to finding the context. I think, in this episode, Vicky, we were kind of like trying to find the articulation of the game changer.
Yeah.
You and I both knew what it was, but I think the game changer really is each person, if you know, and maybe you can build on this after I say it, but each person who's listening to this, the advice I would give them is you need to find the exact context where implementation and execution is natural for you. And
Oh, yeah.
we heard what Vicky's was today. It was, you know, and I'm going to keep using this expression, having skin in the game, having a mentor, and, you know, having someone external to you break down the steps into smaller steps and then just make sure you do them and make sure you do them right. Right. Like, I
Yeah.
think if you had all of that, you know, that would be your context for action and implementation. Right, Vicky?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Is there anything glaringly missing from that? Or if you basically got that, that's, you know,
I think the only thing that wasn't said in that was that not only is it someone that's helping you to know what the next step is, but they're helping to celebrate you for each
mm,
time you do the steps and help you believe in yourself more. Because sometimes I didn't move because I just didn't believe in myself enough to do it.
yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah. And, you know, again, it goes back to like trying to do this alone, where if we're
Mhm.
trying to take an action and we've read the books, we've taken the training, whatever, but there's nobody there who's done it. It's like we might strongly suspect that we're doing something right. We might be totally aware that, okay, I'm not going to see an immediate result or evidence that I've done something right. There's going to be delayed gratification here, but still we could doubt ourselves
Yeah.
and pull back. And we see this in entrepreneurship and business quite a lot.
Yeah.
And so like just the value of an external person, a human, maybe for some people it's even AI. Like you just go to ChatGPT and talk about what you did in business that day and get validation. And maybe that for a lot of
Oh,
people,
that's
that'll
a
be
good one.
enough,
I hadn't thought
right?
of that.
Yeah, right. I've been seeing some posts lately about people
Yeah.
doing stuff like that, right? But that I think for a lot of people is going to be a big part of the context too. It's like, I know what to do. I'm doing what I need to do. And the only way I'm going to keep doing what I need to do is if I have at least some external validation to support me and you know, and to help drive me forward. And I mean that in the best way
Yeah.
possible, right?
Yeah. I love
Mm.
that.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's the big game changer. If I could articulate it, and I'll probably put this in the cold open for the episode, is if you want to create action, you have to find out, maybe through experimentation or maybe through talking to other people who've already done that. What's your action context criteria that creates forward movement? Figure out the components and then make sure you're always in it if you want to take action, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things, just really quick, and you
Yeah.
can delete this if it doesn't pertain, but I like to say that having a coach is like having a drone up above you, and it can see, as you're going down this path, that the bridge is out over here. But if you would take a left, you can make it exactly where you want to go. And we don't know that because we're immersed in whatever we're immersed in. So a coach helps you with that aerial view to help give you direction to get on the right path or stay on the right path.
That's a really good metaphor and very timely too. Like 2025 is going to be the year of the drone, right? Like drones are
Oh,
set
is it?
around. Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you don't follow drone technology, which
No, I don't.
I
No.
do a little, yeah. Like I think 2025 is going to be the year that like everybody buys. Everybody's going to buy a drone is going to buy it this year, right?
Okay.
Because they're like so cheap now and so powerful, and the technology is so cool. Anyways, let's not get sidetracked just too much. I love that metaphor, and you're right, right? Like I think for a lot of people, and obviously we're both coaches, we're both hypnotherapists. We know very well, and most of the listeners of this podcast, of course, are going to be coaches and hypnotherapists and NLP people. We all know very well the value of having an external human, you know, making sure we're taking action, but also at the same time, I do want to respect the fact that that's probably not the ideal solution for everybody, right?
Right.
Whether because of cost limitations, and there are people out there who their best motivator is going to be internal, right? It's not, maybe not the majority of people, but a lot of people, right, can be internally motivated or motivated via like a personal tracking system or whatever. Again, the big takeaway, everybody, figure out what the action taking criteria or context is for you, and then be in it. And then be in it.
Yeah.
And if you're not sure, I think model what Vicki has described today, you know, because there's very few people who, if they truly put themselves in that context that you put yourself in, there's very few people who wouldn't find themselves taking action unless they
Yeah.
have like a total values conflict with the, the business that they're trying to build or something, which is a topic for another day. Right.
Right.
So there we go. I love it. Vicky, anything else to add before we wrap it
Mm,
up?
just thank you so much for being one of the catalysts that helped me get to that place. And I continue to take any course and things, and I'm part of your membership. So I still stay connected with you because it is such a valuable place to be. So I just want to say thank you for that. And thank you for having me here today.
I appreciate that, Vicky. Thank you so much. And for those that are listening who might want to get in touch with you or find out about your offers and all that good stuff, where can they get a hold of you or where can they see your stuff?
On the website, you can either go to theenlightenedpeach.com. That's probably the best place to connect. I also have a what the heck? I don't even remember what it's called. So,
Facebook group? Is that what you're?
I do have a Facebook group. It's called Stand Up and Stand Out. So you can find it by going to vickypoole.com, VICKIEPOOLE.com, and that'll send you straight to the Facebook group.
Sweet. All right. Very good. And all those links will be in the show notes for this episode as well. So everybody, find Vicky, check out her website, check out her Facebook group, follow her on social media. She shares a lot of really valuable content. She's doing awesome stuff. So she's definitely somebody to keep an eye on. So that's it for today. Thanks so much, Vicky, for being one of the first episodes of my brand new podcast, the Hypnotic Game Changers. Always a pleasure to talk with you. Always a pleasure to see and hear what you've got going on. And I think this information and experience that you shared today is immensely valuable, for people who are wanting to take action in their business and haven't taken as much action as they would like just yet. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Cool. All right, here we go.